The law and literature movement has several defining understandings of the relation of law and literature. The first relation between law and literature is perhaps the most obvious one. Literature and law are distinct fields, but literature does often treat law as its subject matter. We generally term this kind of relationship between law and literature as law in literature. Law in literature engages with the representation of the world of the law and of legal situations in imaginative literature and culture. We ought to attend to descriptions or depictions of the law we find in imaginative literature for the simple reason that great literature may contain truths about law that are not easily found within the law. World literature has always been interested in the legal situations. Canonic novel by renowned authors like Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, Franz Kafka's The Trial, Albert Camus' The Stranger, or Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird deal extensively with the law's role in human life and human society. This interest in the law, its power, and its limits is not limited to canonic novel. Popular culture often invokes legal situations and procedures in its reflections on reality. Think, for example, of popular TV dramas like The Good Wife or the Law and Order franchise that use courtroom as a focal point for its representation of societal norms, values, and conflicts. Imaginative literature, arguably, tells us something that the law itself cannot, and that other forms of legal scholarship likewise do not, about the law. Reading the law through literature, then, can open up a way to see the meanings of law in the lives of its subjects, its agents, and its adjudicators, and the meanings of the law in the lives of those that the law ignores, subjugates, marginalizes, or excludes. The reason to read or study such literature, sometimes called legal novels for short, in law schools is straightforward. Literature contains substantive insights into the nature of law, not readily found elsewhere. Up until now, we discussed how works of fiction, novels, films, TV, imagine the law. But it's important to add two distinctions. First, the law is imagined not only in fictional works, but also in works of non-fiction, like documentaries and essayistic writing that reflect and represent the law, its norms and procedures, as they operate in our society. Moreover, real-life law is oftentimes also mediated through cultural narratives. Not many people spend their days sitting in the courtroom or reading legislation gazettes. Legal norms and legal events are often disseminated in society through cultural means, like newspapers, TV news, and social media. People learn about the law, and with the prevalence of social media, also react to it through culture. I use the word literature to include not only works of fiction then, like novels and short stories that are usually the classic example of the law and literature scholarship, but also other genres and medias like nonfiction writing, journalism, documentaries, feature films, plays, and also social media and visual narratives. In other words, I refer to the relationship between law and cultural narratives broadly defined. The second possible relationship between law and literature, assumed or argued by law and literature scholarship, is quite different. Law might be sufficiently like literature that we can view them both as exemplars of something still larger. And of what are they exemplary? One answer, among others, suggested by hermeneutic scholars, literary critics, and literary theorists, and eventually by many interpretation theorists in American law schools as well, is that both law and literature are similar or alike in that they both are text-based. Law, like literature, is textual. Law, like all texts, literary and otherwise, therefore requires interpretation. This view of law as literature is essentially a hermeneutic or interpretive movement. This means that we see the legal text, like constitutions, laws and regulations, or court judgments, contracts, as a form of literature, and we employ literary criticism and analysis in order to better understand the law. Positive law of all forms, statutory, common, constitutional, and imaginative literature, share enough of a to-be-interpreted textual essence that it is fruitful to think of law and literature as forms of the same thing, text requiring interpretation, at least with regards to how we understand their meaning. Law as literature sees value in the techniques employed by literary critics in order to decipher the meaning of the legal text. A major difference that should be noted is that unlike law in literature scholars, who see a scholarly value in exploring works of art that represent legal situation, Law as literature is less interested in the subjects and topics of novels, stories, or films and more, and is more interested in exploring the possibilities offered by modes and methods from the field of literature. Put very simply, for the law and literature branch, what's important is reading books, and what the law as literature branch is emphasizing is literary theory. Despite this difference, in practice, law and literature scholars often mix between the two approaches, drawing on both literature and literary theory in their analysis and interpretation of the law.